Hello world, I'm Don, and I'm back with another video. This one will also be around the new Nik Collection 7, but in this time I'll be starting out in Photolab and then working my way there. This is a really spontaneous video. Basically, I was just playing. I had this image, and I was just really enjoying the process and actually surprised myself with a couple of the things I did with it because I was just playing and exploring and having a lot of fun with it. It was a bit like a kid in a candy store. So I've got this image here, and when you look at this image, actually let me go ahead and close some of this stuff down so the image is a little bigger. Just bring that down there. So obviously it is really blue. I had my white balance on daylight, and this was the result. I was in shade, these little bits of dappled light coming through. There were some trees off to my left. And really what caught my eye were the textures in this sand going like this, the ripply, interesting textures, which I always love. And then the unusual bit of having these little pockets of light placed around. So I did my best to try to find a nice place to position everything and gave that a go. Now this image is completely reset except for the crop. And I have to be honest, I'm not going to mess with the crop because when I was deciding how to kind of crop it the first time, I fussed over it a bit, and it's one of those things that I might never get it the same again. So I'm just going to leave my crop and not push my luck with my crop. So that's the kind of crop that I've done with it. Now, when I look at this image, obviously it is very blue, so that's one thing I'll be looking at in Photolab. And also I noticed that the histogram here is quite narrow. There's not a lot of contrast going on here. So one of the things I'll want to be doing is working out that contrast. I have, boom, if I bring that up for a second, this kind of gives you a sense of where I'm more or less heading with the image. With one small change that I'll talk about along the way. There was one thing I didn't overly like about this, and I'm going to try something different on this second run through. But you can see that the histogram is kind of got a lot more contrast in it in this version, and that's one of the things I'll be working on, among other things. So popping back here, and I'll just hide this again as well. So maybe the first thing that I'm going to do is just have a wee crack at the white balance, see how I can go with that. And what I want to do with the white balance here is basically take a bunch of this blue out of it. Although there's part of me that kind of likes the blue, but I think it's just it's a bit too much for my taste. So I'm going to come up here and just drag this up maybe around there-ish. And one of the things I want to check here with this is where these colors are falling. Because I want it to be this bit to be a little bit warm, and if you look up at the histogram numbers there, you can see that it's just a smidge warm, but that green channel's almost on top of it, so we'll do some more tweak here. Might even just go just a little bit more, maybe go that way, a bit more like that. Yeah, but I think also one of the things that's going to help this is to bring up my magenta side of things. So maybe try that around there. See where that's at. So now my red channel is a fair bit ahead there. And if I look here, where are things at? We've got my blue channel a fair bit ahead. So that's probably a pretty good, and I think it's pretty similar to where I got to on that previous version that I showed for this point in things. So just kind of getting things roughly corrected, and then I'm going to have a play in color effects and take things further from there. So for this image, since I'm going to be going to color effects, I'm not going to muck about with anything else in the color space. We'll just let that ride. And I'm going to come over here to my light tab and just do a few tweaks in here. So one of the things I want to do is to stretch out this histogram a little bit. And I think I could try smart lighting, and it would definitely I can flick it on briefly. It definitely stretches it out. Coming away from smart lighting, going to selective tone, and I'm going to bring my highlights up I like round numbers. I'll take that to about 50. Seems about good. Basically, I just want to stretch things out, but I don't want to, this sand wasn't crazy hot. I want there to be some sense of highlights in it, but I don't need to crank it to the end here. I also want to bring my midtones up a bunch. Go maybe about there. Shadows I'll leave alone, and I'm going to bring my blacks down a fair bit. I just want to pull that. That's going to help a lot with contrast, I reckon, in the whole thing. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. So that's fine. I'll leave that with that. I'm not going to do anything there. Now, I mentioned that I was going to do something slightly different in this edit than the example photo that I showed you. So I'm going to come down to contrast next. And I mentioned before that there was a little bit of a difference that I was going to do. And this is where the difference, my intentional difference at least, who knows, there might be others, it came in, is in this contrast. So with my last edit, I turned on contrast, and that bit of micro contrast that tends to want to come on comes on with its auto. I just found it a little bit chunky down here, though. I found if I do that, it's just a little bit intense on the individual grains of sand. So what I thought that I would do in the end and try this out and see, I can compare it in the end, is I'm actually going to turn off the auto. I'm going to bring this down so that it kind of smooths out those individual grains just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring the fine contrast up. And just a wee little disclaimer note is you will only have fine contrast if you have Film Pack installed. I needed to think for a moment there which extra it is, but it's Film Pack that gives you fine contrast. So this is just going to be a little gentler on the fine particles of the sand, but it still gives me good contrast. So you can see there, it's kind of giving a more broad without over exaggerating the individual grains of sand. So that's my big difference. And we'll see. I'll compare the two in the end and see which I prefer. But you see that? It is definitely giving a nice kind of shape to things without getting too chunky. Close those down. So the other thing I want to get to in here in this area is vignetting, and just turn that on. And I don't actually like it entirely removed, so I'm going to just bring that down maybe about 30 or so, which takes a little bit of it away, but not all of it. And, sometimes you do need to play with that. Keep in mind that there is a manual here. And with the manual, you get not only intensity of the removal, and you see that takes things even further, but you also get an ability to place your middle. I've got a couple of lenses that really prefer that to fully get rid of the vignetting. But I'll just come back to here, close that, and bring that back to 30. So with this, I'll also want to just confirm that I've got my lens softness correction going, and indeed I do. So that's fine. I'm happy enough with that. And then if I pop over to the geometry space, I've got crop, which I said I was going to leave on, and I've already got distortion turned on. So that's all good. So that, in fact, is everything that I want to do inside of Photolab. So now I'll want to jump over to Nik Collection to color effects. So I'll just need to, of course, bring this up in order to get at it. From there, of course, I'm going to click on the button here. And I think the last time I was over there, I had reopened this TIFF file. And of course, if you're reopening a TIFF file, it's important that you just pop in here and do export selected files without processing. If you're using that little tick box that allows you to re-edit. So right now I'm going from RAW, and so I want it to export as a TIFF. So I just need to quickly change that. I'm happy with all of the settings that are there. So I'll now click OK. And I'll just go ahead and click on Nik 7 Color Effects. Of course, I've done this once before, so it's asking me, do I want to do unique names? And I do want unique names because I want to be able to compare the two edits in the end. There goes the export. And now the launching. And again, I mentioned this in my other video, but that's so much faster to launch than it used to be. It's really, really quite wonderful. I think that's part of the reason that I'm enjoying things so much. And like I said, that I was like a kid in a candy store and just exploring and trying things out and having fun with it. And I think part of that is because it's just quite quick and it, it doesn't feel like I'm constantly waiting for things to happen. So love it. So my other videos got some little bits of, walkthrough and explanation about the new things in the software. I'm not going to cover on that really at all. I might mention something along the way, but it's not going to be the focus here. I'm going to try to quickly do my edit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get brilliance and warmth filter, and it's right here, ready to go. I will just highlight the fact that this search is here. So I will do that. And basically I want to add warmth to all of these sun patches particularly. So instantly, I'm going to be using some kind of control points to limit things. And I'm just going to crank that up, maybe about there. Going to increase the saturation a bit and just a little bit of perceptual saturation as well. Honestly, I don't know the nitty-gritty of the difference between these two things. Kind of just going with move the slider and see if I like it. So, and what I mean by that is the difference between saturation and perceptual saturation. I'm sure there is a very deep and convoluted explanation for what those differences are. I'm not sure what they are, but I just know that a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I quite like the result. And that's where I'm headed with this. So now, of course, I want that to be applied to a few places particularly. So I'm going to just grab a control point and I'll start out, drop one there because this is one of the places and I want to make it oval. I want to turn it a bit, get it shaped so that it's nicely shaped for things. I'm going to drop one here. Hello. This is the second time I've done that. When I go to get this little handle here, I end up grabbing this, which is funny because half the time I can never get a hold of these. I don't like these handles on the screen at all, personally. I know some people love them. I know that, and I apologize to you if you're a lover of the handles. I don't love these ones. These ones are okay, but the other ones I find just get in the way for me, for my preference. So I'm going to do that. And let's see now. Going to put one up there as well. Again, we'll make that a bit oval. Twist that out a little bit. And again, if you're just watching there, I'm grabbing these little round handles to change the circular nature of things, to affect the ovalness. And just out here can affect the size. And in between, I'm just grabbing the wee tool, putting it on. So these ones around the back, I want the front one to kind of have the full intensity of that. And maybe I should have done this on the way, but I'm just going to pull a bit of the intensity out of the ones further back. Just select on them, bring the opacity down for those ones a little. This one, maybe not quite as much, maybe 85 there on that one. This one, cool. Just going to make that smaller so that I might just drop one there too, actually. Grab this. Probably could have just reshaped the other one, but anyway, that's fine. And I'll just drop the intensity of that one as well. Nice. So you can have different intensities for all these different points, because if you notice, if I come back up here to control point 1, the original is still on 100. So you can kind of mix and match how much of the effect is coming through in different areas, which is a super cool feature. Love that bit. Right, so now the next thing that I want to do, I'll just come up here and maybe click on that for a second, is to bring in, and this is one of my exploratory bits, was the bicolor user defined. Let's see. Bicolor user defined right here. This is the one. This is not one that I've ever used a whole lot. And you look at that and you might think to yourself, I totally know why you've never used that a lot. That's crazy. That's atrocious. So you can see we've got the upper color set to blue here, and you can change these, but in fact, I quite like them given what's going on. So just do a few tweaks to it. I'm going to maybe just up that a little bit. It's just taking a little bit more of the sort of browny color up into things. And maybe just going to bring that down a touch. Just do like that. Maybe just a little hair of a rotation so that it's like it's coming a bit more from this corner. And then the ultimate thing that's really going to help to make this not atrocious is just to reduce my opacity. So it's just impacting things a bit. So I'm just going to go off and on. You can get a sense for what that's doing. So it's actually making quite a interesting difference. And I find that it adds a bit of depth because it's going from the warmth into the sort of bits of blue up here, which tend to my sense at least, make them want to recede a bit more. So it's giving that a little bit more of a sense of depth. And you'll notice as I continue to move on that I'm totally sold on this search. I didn't include this at all in my previous video. I was like, meh, it's a search, who cares? But with such a long list, you saw me, if you watched my last video, hunting through like, where's the thing, right? I was looking for Viveza in my last video. Like, seriously, VIV, and boom, there you go. You can see there's some different aspects, global adjustment, selective tones, and white balance, all from Viveza. So like this search thing is gold. But anyway, I don't want Viveza right now. I want detail extractor. That's the one right there. Just going to click on that. So with the detail extractor, of course, I don't actually want it everywhere. I don't want these edges. You can see if I turn that off, these edges brighten up quite a bit. And again, I'm trying to maintain that so that there's a focus inwards. So I just want it to be kind of in here, which I feel like is going to pull in and maybe add some more depth. Is what I'm after, is to add a sense of depth here. So happy with the settings. You know, just want a little bit of this, and I'm just going to pop this on to maybe about here. Just reshape this a bit. Just want to press my M key and see where that falls. Seems like that falls pretty nicely. But I do want to add it to this bit here too. So I'm just going to, rather than mucking about with the chrominance and luminance, etc., I'll just add another point onto the little sunspot. And that should probably grab that area and just add it in more wholly. Yep, there we go. Awesome. So now if I turn that off and on, it's just adding a little bit more depth through that and contrast through that center bit, which is what I'm after. I feel like it's actually adding a little bit more, I don't quite know how to describe it, a little bit more body to the bright bit as well, which is quite cool. Right, so moving on from that, next I want to go over and get a Pro Contrast filter. Pro Contrast. And I've commented before, I'll probably comment again, that this is one of my favorite filters in here. I'm just going to give it a little bit of each one. That'll do. And also just want to keep it from digging into the shadows too much, as it's adding its contrast, to not add too much to the shadows. I don't want them going too dark. So we'll call that somewhere, maybe just a smidge more, somewhere about good. Cool. So I'll just do an off and on with that, off and on, just adding another level of contrast. You know, as I'm looking at that, I'm thinking to myself, I actually not positive I want that right the way through. So I think I'm going to add a control line, and I'm going to have that sort of fade out as it goes up. I'm going to press M. Yep, that's good. Maybe come down a little bit with that. And again, with that, I think that I will just add a further point here just to grab this, because I noticed it wasn't, oh, that handle. Honestly, I have a hard time getting these handles when I want them. I don't know why I grab them so much when I'm trying to get at these ones. There we go. That'll be lovely, and that'll capture that nicely. So that's got both bits with a control line and then a control point, which is just keeping the adjustment off of this top bit. So again, hopefully adding some depth there, as there's a bit more contrast in the front of the image. That feels like I might just click on the control line. Might just move that up a touch. There we go. That'll be good. So now here comes another little bit of my experimentation with one that I don't know that I've ever added before. Graduated fog, which was interesting. And there wasn't too much to my experimentation with this. I didn't mess with the methods or anything. I just dropped my opacity, basically. Just wanted to, and my notion here is just, again, it's kind of like taking away a little bit of the contrast in the background, which is my hope being that that it's adding this little bit more of a sense of depth as you go backwards. You just see what we do there, just like that. So it's leaving the contrast in the front. I think I might just take this back a little bit. Nice. All right, so that's probably good. And I want to do a levels and curves as my last thing. There we go. And I'd like to tell you a little secret. And that secret is that the levels and curves, in my opinion, always preface things with "in my opinion," are better than the ones in Photolab. And let me tell you why. They're better than the ones in Photolab because they've got this channel right here, the luminance channel. And I know from blend modes in Photoshop that you can avoid color shifts if you use the luminance channel. So if I were to do this, and this is very aggressive, it's for a point. If I were to do that big S curve, there's quite a bit of a shift here in the color. Cool. So let me reset this. That's fine. If I go to luminance and I do a similar curve, it doesn't impact the colors nearly as much. And so, in my opinion, the curves here, and I've mentioned in a previous video about Photolab that, one of the improvements I'd love to see, because I really like the curves tool, but I think there are quite a few little tweaks that could be made to the curves tool in Photolab that would be just wonderful to have. So I will continue to advocate curves tool. It's good for everyone. I'm going to bring this up. I'm probably going to bring this down a little bit. I'm leaving it on the luminance channel. And let me just get a sense for what that's doing here. About there. Maybe. I don't want to be too heavy-handed there. I don't want it to be too, crunchy. I do want there to be a sense of depth and texture and stuff, but without being too crunchy. That's my ultimate goal here. Yeah, right. So I think that I am super happy with this. Let me go ahead and save it, and I'll click apply. It's on non-destructive edits, so it'll be my TIFF file that I can reopen and get back at my same edits. So if I do decide that I wanted to change something, I can do that. It's a great wee feature to have. So I'll just click apply. And back in Photolab, here is my edited file. And here's the one I did previously. So I did the other one previously with a touch more contrast, didn't I? I think I prefer... It's tough, but I think I prefer the new one better. And I think I certainly prefer... Remember I said about the chunkiness in here when I changed things? And this looks a lot more like sand and a lot less pumped up, if you know what I mean. So I think that was a really good decision. And if you remember, that was me. I actually turned down the micro contrast and then turned up the fine contrast. The fine contrast basically is not dissimilar to micro contrast, but it's not in the tiny, tiny, tiny details. It's kind of up a notch, if you will, to my understanding. I'm certainly not a software engineer, but I tend to prefer fine contrast myself. So there we have it. If I come back to here, which is the one that I exported, and then if I just come down to this one here, this is the first one I edited. This is the second one I edited. So this will compare against my Nick version. Nice. I like that. And like I said, I like that more than the other one. It's got the texture, it's got the feeling I was hoping for. It doesn't have the crunchiness, and I didn't over contrast it. So I am really pleased with that. I'm curious about the luminosity of this, and here is a trick that, pardon me, over here though. I'm curious about the luminosity of this. Make sure I'm on the correct one. Yes, I am. I know it's the correct one because when I look, it was renamed. If you look at the name on the left-hand side near the bottom, you can see it says Nick-1, and this one is Nick. That was the first one, obviously, that I put out, and then this is the one that I've done more recently, so you can always tell the difference that way, just in the naming. But yes, I was going to check the luminosity of this space, and one of the things that I do with this, so I mean, I can do that. That gives me a sense. It's not always my favorite sense. It's a funny thing to say, but hopefully you get what I mean. But what I often do is just grab the crop tool and crop down, because whatever's in the crop tool will be represented in the histogram. So I can see that that's actually probably, given that's my sort of highlighty bit of the image, a really nice place for it. You know, the bulk of it is just a touch over midpoint, and it's kind of, you know, in this space. So as the highlightness of the image, I think that's probably a really nice place to be. I check things like that using numbers often because I find my eyes can be tricked so easily. So hopefully that's been enjoyable. Another chance to see the new Nik Collection 7 doing what it does best. A chance to see how much quicker it is. It really is nice to use at this point. And to be fair, I have had Nik Collection since Google put it for free. Unfortunately for Nik, I never could afford it when they had it, which is probably part of the reason that it got sold in the end. Yeah, so and ever since DxO's had it, I've had Nik, and you know, I've always enjoyed it, but I really feel like it's just kicked up a notch. So super excited for that. Super excited to keep trying it on and having fun with it. And as always, I'll say thanks for watching, and if you are thinking of trying or buying, remember there are some affiliate links down in the description below, and I do appreciate you using those. Again, even if you're just trying it out, that's all good. With that, bye for now, and talk again soon.